cast you into a pit of infinite torches.
Hello and welcome, Exiles, to my 10D version of an Aura Stacker. This is a character that I have a lot of history with, making the Herald Stacker in Delirium League. Aura Stackers have been very strong for a long time, but over time they got a few different nerfs, and currently Aura Stackers really aren't that great, and it's mainly just Armor Stackers, which are Aura Stackers in disguise, that are kind of good at this current state of the game. And I wanted to see, could we make a pretty good Aura Stacker on 10 Divines? And the answer is, I gotta say, I think this character's pretty solid for 10 Divines. We have on our character 30,000 armor, about 1,200 regen, which sometimes pops up to 6k with the Guardian regen, 87 max res, we have about almost 6k ES, and we have -4 chaos res. So we have one glaring hole in our defenses. We also have 58 suppressed. That's lucky, so that's around 90, 85, 80 suppressed. I don't know. You do the math if you care that much about it. But anyways, we have one glaring hole in our defenses. That's chaos res. And I want to say that's mainly due to the fact we're on a very tight budget. 10 Divines does not go far, and it should be obvious when you look at my gear how it doesn't go far. In the current economy, Divines are about 115 chaos, and I have to say, there's very few rare good rares priced at reasonable prices. When I've been searching around for rares, they just haven't really been that good for the price, which has led to me to an all-unique build. And I have to say, it's not really... Sorry, there's a fly that's gonna just... So close. Anyways, there aren't too many uniques, or there aren't too many rares that are worth it compared to the cheap uniques that are available this league. And so that's led me down this sort of path where we're just fully kitted and fully orange gear. Now, orange gear is, number one, it can be pretty dang good for Aura Stackers. For example, Nebulous is a pretty hard weapon to beat. It's got like 300% damage when you have a 90 max res. We didn't quite get there. We got close. But it gives a bunch of percent damage, so it's pretty hard to beat. It's usually a good option. We have a Prism Guardian, which is usually pretty hard to beat in terms of Aura reservation space. You can also go for a dual Nebula. So those are kind of hard to beat with rares. You can beat them with really good rares, but that is a harder situation to pull off. And then we have things like a Doriani's Delusion, which gives you a gem socket. It gives us Purity Fire skill. Purity Fire level 21 was going to cost me about 70C. So for me to save money, I bought boots that had level 25 Purity of Fire on them. It was cheaper to buy these boots than it was to buy the level 21 Purity of Fire, if that makes sense. And then other things like Crown of the Inward Eye, Cyclopean Coil. These are just things that give you a decent amount of ES, a decent amount of attribute scaling, and a decent amount of percent damage, just a little bit here and there. For example, Cyclopean Coil, when you have about 200 of each attribute, that's about 40% damage. It's got some decent life and some decent percent attribute, and it gives us shock and ignite immunity based on our stats. So it's pretty high value for a belt that cost us, I think this belt cost us, I don't know, 50C or something. It wasn't particularly expensive. At this point in the league, there's so many flooded Cyclopean Coils that are max rolled in the market that it doesn't really end up costing too much. So it's a pretty high value item for the price compared to the rares that were available. Now, the big downside of doing a bunch of uniques is your chaos res suffers. But the thing is, getting good chaos res on rares is generally more expensive than you can reasonably fit in a 10 divine budget, so I just went without it. That's kind of my choice in here. If I was to add more budget into the build and fix chaos res, the first place I would do it would probably be to drop one of my Circle of Guilt rings for just a ring that had a bunch of chaos res, like a amethyst with a chaos res roll and a hybrid craft. That would get you basically to cap chaos res by itself. But can't really do that when you're shopping on a budget. Those just don't really fit in the price point. Now let's go ahead and give you guys a showcase of a arena map, and I'll talk about the build as we go through it. I have a Maven here. I didn't have it for Baron, but I had already prepped the map, so I just went with it for this initial showcase of the character. We were playing Glacial Cascade. Why did I choose Glacial Cascade? It's a skill that just has 100% fizz, the cold conversion, so it pairs really well with Hatred, and I was going to scale into Hatred Aura effect. It also is a situation where I wanted to see if I could get decent AoE, and initially I was thinking I was maybe going to do an Unnatural Instinct here and get AoE here as well. Unfortunately, I couldn't really fit that in my budget. It just was too expensive for the 10 Divine budget, so we only ended up with 60 AoE between these two clusters here. which is okay-ish for overlap. I don't know if it was really working that well. Ultimately, I wanted to test a more late game setup with Glacial, Cascade of the Fisher, but I think that skill itself requires much more AoE, probably 200, 300% plus to really get some decent overlaps on it, and we just weren't going to be hitting that. Let's go ahead and see what it looks like mapping this. I see right now we are on a low light radius map, so I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drop probably one node here. I'm going to drop the ignite immunity just to get the mastery that allows us to see in the dark, because seeing in maps like this is just, it's one of those things where it's like, if you're playing a low life build, you always get the low life build tax, which is you can't run low life maps, or you have to click that node, because otherwise your eyes are just going to be on fire by the end of it. Now I want to show you guys something cool I'm doing here. You'll see my hatred is not on, but right now I have no reservation space for it, but I click hatred and it's on, and that's because we are pairing it with Herald of Purity. This is something that I saw as we were making the build. Somebody wanted to showcase me an Ice Crash of Cadence build, and I wasn't really keen on trying Ice Crash of Cadence, but during that showcase, I saw something very interesting, which is something I think I will use in future builds, because I think it's very, very smart. And that is exactly what we have here. It's Herald or Hatred with a Herald of Purity. And what this does is, while you have any of these Herald of Purity guys up, you have uptime on your Hatred. If all of them die, then it will turn off, and you'll see that happens occasionally when I like don't go in combat for a while, or I don't refresh the dudes, etc. But it's a pretty high uptime aura, and what it is if you're playing a Fizz build where you're already going to be going and using a aura like Pride, like Hatred, or Herald of Purity regardless, and I'd say do this with a damage aura, not a defensive aura, because you don't really want to have random downtime on defensive auras. That's like the difference in randomly dying because you don't have armor with determination, stuff like that. But with an offensive aura like a Hatred, like a Pride, a 50% reservation space, you get really good uptime. Now, hopefully you're seeing this. I'm just trying to like point out, look at the bottom right corner where the Hatred is. The uptime is essentially based on those guys, and it's very high. It's similarly has very high uptime in boss fights. The only way you get downtime on this, and if you watch the VOD of yesterday of me fighting Ubers, you'll see exactly why you get downtime, and essentially it's because I wouldn't really look at my, how do I put this? I wouldn't really look at my, oh, I need to pick up these auras, or these shrines. I didn't even think about those. I wouldn't really look at my bottom right, and I'd just kind of be clicking it randomly, this is something where I just like, I hadn't played the character much, I didn't really know how to play it. So I kept just clicking it out of habit to be like, oh, hopefully this is, make sure it's on, or make sure to turn that on. And I have something bricked on my character. Why is my... Ooh, I know what I did. I leveled up, I will turn off my vitality. Nah, I'd rather turn off my precision. It looks like I leveled up my, I leveled up my, oh, what's it called? My auras I'm reserving on my life, I leveled one of them up so I can no longer fit them. Basically, I need to go D-level 1. This is something where you, essentially when you're doing reservation on your life pool with flat auras, as they level up, they get more flat reservation. And what happened here was I wasn't really paying attention, and I forgot to lock them out, and therefore when I got the XP, I just auto-clicked the level up, which then made it so I couldn't afford to reserve it. Right now we're missing one of our auras, precision, which gives us crit, or it could have been vitality, which would have been regen, etc, etc. I just didn't realize what I'd done. Basically what you would do is you would go and you would grab, like, if you make a mistake like this where you this is just a little like aura reservation space tidbit, which I need to take this out to showcase. If you accidentally level up something you're not supposed to level up, say we leveled up precision, say we leveled up clarity once. I don't know what we leveled up, to be honest with you. I'm just kind of guessing. If you do something where you randomly leveled up a reservation space and made it so you couldn't fit everything, what am I missing right now? I think that should be basically everything. No, I'm missing something. Clarity, that's what it is. Okay, clarity. Let's try this again. See, now I have everything fit. Basically, if you level up some flat auras, they will just turn themselves off once you get to too much reservation space, and that's what had happened there. A little bit distracted by it, but whatever. Anyways, point is, this is Glacial Cascade. I don't think I really got enough AoE to fully benefit. I think Glacial Cascade is one of those skills where the more AoE you get on it, the better it gets. And Glacial Cascade of the Fisher, which I will showcase, I did do some of the Ubers with Fisher and with regular Glacial Cascade. My conclusion was I think regular Glacial Cascade is a bit better damage, but I think that's just because I don't have enough AoE. The way it works is regular Glacial Cascade has 4 bursts, and the last burst does a lot more damage, but its base damage is 65. Whereas Glacial Cascade of the Fixture, base damage is 130, but every single burst is like evenly split. So when I shoot this out, it has, okay, I'm just gonna make it so it doesn't have MTX so you can tell the difference between the two. It actually has 8 bursts. It goes much, much further, but they have a smaller base radius and they hit a bit harder. So the idea is if you get a ton of AoE, you could actually get much more shotgun hits and harder shotgun hits. So that's the idea. I just don't think I have enough AoE for that really to be the case. So that's kind of the difference between these two skills. You can make up your mind, try out different things, see what you like, but Glacial Cascade goes longer and further, has more burst. Potentially with enough AoE, you can get a lot more shotgun and it ends up being pretty good. But I just don't think I really had the AoE on this character. I had 60 AoE. I think you probably need like 200, 250, 300 plus AoE for it to really pop off in terms of extra shotgunning from the extra burst hitting the same enemy. All right. I also am using Soul of Ascension here. This is to give ourselves basically a lot more cast speed. Soul of Ascension is one of those things where if your character isn't instantly deleting a boss, these are pretty good. While you're mapping, you get a decent amount of Soul Eater stacks that builds up throughout the map. Feels pretty good. I have to say, honestly, I think these gloves are quite good for the price. If you're ever shopping on a budget and one of the things you're missing is attack and cast speed, you could put these on. I wouldn't want these to be your only source of attack and cast speed. Like you want your character to feel good to play. So like if you die and you lose all your Soul Eater stacks, you don't want to be going from extremely slow to finally having some decent speed. You want to be decently fast and then much faster is what I would recommend if you're building into these gloves. You want some speed before you put on these gloves, just so the baseline is decent and that's going to feel better to play with. All right, outside of that, we also have the Guardian's Blessing Hatred thing, which is what I was talking about with auras. This makes it so Herald of Purity costs twice as much, so it's a 50% reservation, but it gives us access to a 50% aura at the same time. So we're trading 75% reservation for 50% reservation, so it cuts off the reservation by a decent amount. It costs us a jewel socket, and then it also gives 32 aura effect to the damage aura we're putting on. So that's a big upside in terms of like giving this some extra juice, some extra power. And I think it's a really good thing that I'm going to pair in future physical-based characters. This is one of those things where if I had known about it, I probably would have used it on my Berserker character, or I would have thought about doing a Herald of Purity plus Pride, because Pride, I didn't end up getting that build. I didn't have the space for it, and this would have been a scenario where I could have put that into the build potentially, because the reservation space would have been close enough. And there's a lot of scenarios you run into like that, but this is one of the big takeaways I have from this build. Fizz-based character, if I use Herald of Purity, this is a great thing to pair it with. Anyways, outside of that, our tree is mainly going for a hybrid of the decent caster nodes in the area, like the crit nodes, and all the good aura effect nodes nearby to the Scion start. Pairing with Balbala, where we get some level of aura effect. We have 2 aura effect nodes, I believe, in these 2 notables. Grabbing the suppress nodes that are close by, as well as Lucky Suppress. I will say, we did have a couple suppress tattoos on this character. No, I did not use this was just left over from my previous character. I didn't really want to scour it off. So we cheated a little bit in having these suppressed tattoos. Technically, our budget, we had how much left over? We had like 32C. I don't know how much a suppressed tattoo costs, so we might have been cheesing it a little bit because of that. Suppressed tattoo is, I had my Awakened portrait on. I could check real quick. Suppressed tattoo is about 38 chaos per. So I definitely cheesed the budget a bit there, just because I didn't really want to scour off the tattoos I put on this character. Anyways, outside of that, this was basically 10 divines of budget put into a aura stacker, and I think it turned out decently. It's got good defenses for the budget and some pretty decent damage. So if you're looking for a real budget a route to get into trying out an aura stacker archetype, this gives you a good starting point. I will say this is a level 97 character, so it's a pretty high level character. But that being said, I think for the most part, the baseline of this sort of concept, this sort of approach works decently. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. As always, appreciate you watching. Take care and peace out. Have a good one, Exiles.